Hello, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, men of all ages, women of all ages, whatever you are. Welcome to Wednesday's video. And today, I'm going to be reading an oldie but a goodie. And by that, I mean I'm going to be reading an OG creepypasta. Now, since it's like the mid-month of October, I decided, you know what? Might as well just go ahead and just read a short and sweet one. But the only problem is that there's more than one part to it. And of course, if you don't know it, then you'll know it. I'm talking about the most infamous, most known, most realist of real, totally made up story of a copy of Majora's Mask. Anyways, if you didn't catch on what we're reading, we're going to be reading Ben Drowned. As I said, an oldie but a goodie. Now sit back, relax, pull up some popcorn, pull up a TV, pull up a book, put on your headphones if you're going to listen to this, and we shall start with part 1. I recently moved into my dorm rooms, starting as a sophomore in college, and a friend of mine gave me his old N64 to play. I was stoked to say that least. I could finally play all those old games of my youth. I hadn't touched in at least a decade. His N64 came with one yellow controller, and a rather shabby copy of Smash 64. And while beggars can't be choosers, it didn't take long before I got bored of beating up level 9 CPUs. That weekend, I decided to drive around a few neighborhoods in about 20 minutes or so off campus, hitting up local garage sales. I was hoping to score some good deals from ignorant parents. I ended up picking up a copy of Pokemon Stadium, GoldenEye, F-Zero, and 2 controllers for $2. Satisfied, I began to drive off to the neighborhood when one last house caught my attention. I still had no idea why it did. There were no cars, and only one table was set up with random junk on it. However, something sort of drew me there. I usually trust my gut on these things, so I got out of my car and was greeted by an old man. His outward appearance was, for lack of a better word, displeasing. It was odd. If you ask me why I thought he looked displeasing, I couldn't really pinpoint anything. There was just something about him that put me on edge. I can't explain it. All I can tell you that that if it wasn't in the middle of the afternoon and there weren't other people within shouting distance, I would have had even thought of approaching the man. He flashed a crooked smile at me and asked what I was looking for. Immediately I noticed he must be blind in one eye. His right eye had that glaze over look about it. I forced myself to look to his left eye, trying not to offend, and I asked if he had any old video games. I was already wondering how I could politely excuse myself from the situation when he would tell me he had no idea what a video game was, but to my surprise, he said he had a few in an old box. He assured me that he'd be back in a jiffy, and turned to head up back into the garage. As I watched him hobble away, I couldn't help but notice he was selling on his table. Littered across his table were rather peculiar paintings, various artworks, and that looked like ink blots for a psychiatric might show you. Curious, I looked through them. It was obvious why no one was visiting this guy's garage sale. They weren't exactly authentic, aesthetic, eh, aesthetically pleasing. As I came to the last one, I noticed it was almost like Majora's Mask, with the same heart-shaped body with little spikes protrude around outward. Initially, I just thought that since I was secretly hoping to find that game at these garage sales, some Furin bullshit was projecting itself to the ink bolts. However, given the events that happened after, I'm not so sure now. I should have asked the man about it. I wish I asked about of the man about it. After staring at the Majora-shaped blot, I looked up at the old man was suddenly there again, arm's length in front of me and smiling. I'll admit, I jumped out of reflex and laughed nervously as he handed me an N64 cartridge. It was a standard gray color, had no label. Someone had written Majora on it with black permanent marker. I got butterflies in my stomach as I realized what a coincidence it was, and that's how much the old man wanted for it. The old man smiled and told me I could have it for free. He said it used to belong to a kid around my age that didn't live here anymore. There was something weird about how he phrased that, but I didn't really pay attention. I was too caught up in not finding the game, and not only finding the game, but getting it for free. I reminded myself to be a bit skeptical since that looked like a pretty shady cartridge. There was no guarantee it would work. However, the optimist inside me interjected that maybe it's some kind of beta or pirated version of the game. That was all I need. I needed it to be back on Cloud 9. I thanked the man who smiled and wished me well, saying goodbye then, which at that time it sounded like to me all the way in the car ride home. I had nagging doubt that the man had said something else. My fears were confirmed when I booted up the game. To my surprise, it worked just fine. There was only one save file, simply named Ben. The man was saying, "Goodbye, Ben." I felt bad for him. He was obviously a grandparent going senile. I, for some reason or another, reminded him of his grandson, Ben. Out of curiosity, I looked at the save file. I could tell he was pretty far in the game, and he had almost all the mask and three-fourths of bosses remaining. I noticed that he had used an owl statue to save his game. He was on day 3 by the stone tower temple, with hardly an hour before the moon would crash. I remember thinking it was a shame he had come so close to beating the game but never finished it. I made a new save file named Link, out of tradition, and started the game. I was ready to relive my childhood. For such a shady-looking cartridge, I was impressed at how smoothly it ran. Literally, it's just like a retail copy of the game. Save for a few minor hiccups here and there, textures being where they should be, random flashes of cutscenes at odd intervals, nothing too bad. However, the only thing that was a little unnerving was at times the NPC would call me Link and call me Ben at other times. I figured it was a bug, maybe a fluke in the program that caused our save files to get mixed up or something. It did kind of creep me out for a while. Though, around that time, I beat the Woodfall Temple. I regrettably erased that Bane file. I intended to preserve the file out of respect to the game's original owner. It's not like I needed 2 files anyway. I hoped that would solve the problem. It didn't. It did, and it didn't. Now NPCs wouldn't call me anything. Where my name should be in the dialogue was a blank space. My save file was still called Link, however. Frustrated and with homework to do, I put the game down for the day. I started playing the game again last night, getting the lens of truth and working my way towards completing Snowhead Temple. Now, for some of you more hardcore Majora's Mask players, know about the 4th day glitch. For those who don't, you can Google it. I'll stop right there and give you the gist of it. The gist of it is that right as the clock is about to hit 000 on the final day, you talk to astronomer and look through the telescope. If you exit the telescope just as the timer hits 000, the countdown disappears and you essentially have an endless amount of time to finish whatever you were doing. Deciding to do that glitch and try to finish Snowhead Temple, I went in and tried. I happened to get it right on the first time and the counter at the bottom disappeared. When I exited the telescope, I found myself in Majora's boss room at the end of the game. That trippy box in the area. Staring at Skull Kid hovering above me. There was no sound, just him floating in the air above me, and the background music, which was regular for the area, but still creepy. Immediately my palms began to sweat, knees weak, arms are heavy. This was definitely not normal. Skull Kid never appeared here. I tried moving around the area, and no matter where I went, Skull Kid would always be facing me, not saying anything. Nothing would happen, and has kept up for around 60 seconds. I thought the game was bugged or something, but I was beginning to doubt that very much. I was about to reach for the reset button when a text appeared on the screen. You're not sure why, but you apparently had it reservation. I instantly recognized that text. You get that message when you get the room key from Anju at the Stockpot Inn. Why was it playing here? I refused to entertain the nothing that it was almost as if the game was trying to communicate with me. I started to walk around the room again, testing if there was some sort of trigger that enabled me to interact with something before realizing how stupid I was. To even think someone could program the game like this was absurd. Sure enough, though, another message appeared on the screen 15 seconds later, and like the first one, it was already a pre-existing phrase. Go to the lair of the temple's boss? Yes or no? I paused for a second, contemplating what I should press and how the game would react. When I realized I couldn't select no, taking a deep breath, I pressed yes, and the screen faded to white, with the words Dawn of a New Day and the subtext I beneath it. Where I was transported to filled me with the most intense sense of dread and impending fear I've, I've ever experienced. The only way I can describe the way I felt here is having the same feeling of inexpectable depression on a profound scale. I'm not normally a depressed person, but the way I felt here was a feeling I didn't even know existed. It was such a twisted, powerful presence that seemed to wash right over me. I appeared in some kind of weird Twilight Zone version of Clock Tower. I walked out of the clock tower, as you normally do when you start from the first day, only to find all the inhabitants were gone. Usually with the fourth day glitch, you can still find the guards and the dogs running around the outside tower, but they were all gone. What replaced them was an ominous feeling there was something out there. In the same area as me, and I watched me, I had four hearts at Oat, Oat, my name, and the hero's bow. But at this point, I wasn't even considering for my avatar. I felt that it personally was in some kind of danger. Perhaps the most chilling thing was the music. It was a song of healing, ripped straight from the game, and it was playing in reverse. The music would get louder, building up, so you should expect something to pop out at you, but nothing ever did, and the constant loop began to wear on my mental state. Every now and then, every now and then, I would hear the faint laugh of the happy mask salesman in the background. It was just quiet enough that I wasn't sure if I was just hearing things, but just loud enough to keep me determined to find him. I looked in all four clock town, only to find nothing, and no textures, no one. Textures were missing too. West Clock, West Clocktown had me walking on the air an extra, and the entire area felt broken, hopelessly broken. As the reverse song of healing repeated for what must have been like the 50th time, I remember standing in the middle of the staff clock tower, realizing that I had never felt so alone in a video game before. As I walked through the ghost town, I don't know whether it was the combination of the out, out of place textures, the atmosphere, and the haunting melody of the of the once peaceful and soothing song being butchered and distorted, but it was literally on the verge of tears. I had no idea why. I had hardly ever cried, but something had gripped me here and caused this powerful sense of depression that was both foreign and crippling. I tried to leave Clocktown every time I went through one of the exits. The screen would fade back to black, and I went to another zone of Clocktown. I tried playing my ocarina. I wanted to escape. I did not want to be here. However, every time I played the Song of Time or Song of Soaring, it would only say, your notes echo far, but nothing happens. By this point, it was obvious the game didn't want me to leave, but I had no idea why it was keeping me here. I didn't want to go inside the buildings. I felt it would be too vulnerable to whatever. I was terrified. I don't know why, but I came up with the idea that if I drowned myself with laundry pool, I could spawn elsewhere and leave. As I ran towards the pool, it happened. Link grabbed his head and the screen flashed for a brief moment of the happy masked salesman smiling at me. Not Link, but me, with the Skull Kid scream playing in the background. When the screen returned, I was staring at the Link statue usually created by playing the Elegy of Emptiness. I screamed as the thing stared back at me with a haunting facial expression. I turned around and ran back to South Clock Tower town. To my horror, the statue followed me in a way I can only describe as being similar to the weeping angels from Doctor Who. Every so often, at random intervals, the animation would play of the statue appearing behind me. It was like that thing was chasing me, or I don't even want to say it, haunting me. By by this point, I was on the verge of her- hysterics. However, not even once did that thought of turning off the console occur to me. I don't know why, but I was so wrapped up in it. Terror felt also real. Real. I tried to shake the statue, but it would literally appear right behind me every single time it went off screen. Link started to make weird animations I had never seen him do. He would flail his arms around or spasm randomly. The screen would cut to the happy masked salesman smiling again for a brief moment, before I was face to face with the statue again. I ended up running into the swordsman's dojo and ran to him, to the back. I don't know why, but I'm in panic mode. I wanted some kind of assurance I wasn't alone. To my dismay, I found no one. As I turned to leave, the statue cornered me in a cubbyhole in the back. I tried attacking the statue with my sword, but to no avail. Confused and backed into a corner, I stared at the statue and waited for it to kill me. Suddenly, the screen flashed again, and Happy Masked Salesman and Link turned to face me, standing upright in the mirror image of the statue and looking at me with his copy, literally staring at me. Whatever was left of the fourth wall was completely shattered. While I ran out of the dojo terrified, suddenly the game warped me to an underground tunnel. The reverse song of healing queued up again as if I was given a brief moment of rest before the statue started appearing again, this time aggressively. I could only take a few steps before it would be surrounded behind me again. I hurriedly made my way out of the tunnel and appeared in the southern clock town. As I ran aimlessly in the sheer panic, a re-dead suddenly screamed and the screen flashed black. It faded to black. Dawn of a new day, and eyes appeared again. The screen faded in, and I was standing atop the clock tower with Skull Kid hovering over me again. Silent. I looked up and the moon was back, looming just meters above my head. But Skullhead stared at me, hauntingly with the creepy mask. A new song was playing. The Stone Tower Temple theme played in verse. In some sort of desperate attempt, I equipped my bow and fired off a shot. And Skullhead, I actually hit him, and he played an animation of him reeling back. I fired again, and on the third arrow, a text box appeared that said, "That won't do you any good." Heh. I was picked up to the ground, levitated upwards on my back, and Link screamed as he burst into flames, instantly killing him. I jumped when this happened. I'd never seen this move used by anyone in the game. In addition, Skull Kid didn't even have any moves. The dead scene played and my lifeless body was still burning. The Skull Kid laughed and the screen faded to black. I reappeared in the same place. I decided to charge him, but the same thing happened. Link's body was lifted off the ground by some unknown force and burst into flames, again, killing him. This time during the death scene, the faint sound of the reverse song of healing could be heard. On my third and final try, I noticed there was no song playing. All there was the eerie silence. I remember that the original encounter with Skull Kid, you were supposed to use the ocarina to either travel back in time or summon the giants. I attempted to play the Song of Time, but before I could hit the last note, Link's body once again burst into flames, and he died. As the death scene neared its end, the game began to chug. It was as if the cartridge was trying to process a lot of something. When the screen came to, it was the same scene as the first three times, except Link was lying on the ground dead in a position that I've never seen in the game before. His head was tilted towards the camera and Skull Kid was floating above him. I couldn't move or press any buttons. All I could do was stare at Link's body. After around 30 seconds of this, the game faded out with the message, "You have met with a terrible fate, haven't you?" before kicking me to the title screen. Upon getting back to the title screen and starting again, I noticed my save file was gone. Instead of Link, was your turn. Your turn had 3 hearts and no maskable items. I selected this file and was returned to the clock tower, rooftop scene with Link dead, and Skull Kid hovering over with Skull Kid's laugh looping again and again. I quickly reset, and when the game booted up again, there was one more save file added below. Your turn, Ben. The save file is right where it was before I deleted it. The stone tower temple was with the moons almost crashing. I turned the game off at this point. I'm not superstitious, but this is way too screwed up. Even for me. I haven't played it all today. I didn't even get to any sleep last night. I keep hearing the first song and feeling in my head, and I couldn't get past the scene of dread I felt while exploring Clock Tower. I drove back to the old man's house today with a buddy of mine. No way was I gonna go there alone. To ask him some questions. Only to find there was a for sale sign in from the yard. When I rang the doorbell, no one was home. So now I'm back here writing down the rest of my thoughts and recording what happened. Sorry if some of this had grammatical errors and whatnot. I'm running on no sleep here. I'm terrified of this game. Even more so now that I relive that the second time just writing this down. However, I feel like there's still more to that there meets the eye, and there's something calling me to investigate this further. I think Ben is something in this equation, but I don't know what. If I could get a hold of the old man, I would not be able to find some answers. I need another day or so to recuperate before tackling the game again. However, I felt it was already taking a toll on my sanity. But next time I do this, I'm going to record the entire thing. The idea to record only came to me toward the end. So you see the last few minutes of what I saw, including Skull Kid and Elegy statue. But it's on YouTube, here. And that concludes part 1 of Vendron. If you guys want to see me read part 2 and the rest of up to part 5, let me know. I will do so. And as for the link to the YouTube video, I'll leave it in the description down below. Happy Halloween, everybody. This is Crazy Gamer 2K, signing off for now.